This video is part of the Saving Tekken 8 project, where I break it down in forensic detail the flaws of modern Tekken design philosophy. Hey guys, it's me again, Nova, the edgy karate guy, your Tekken buddy. In this video, I'll be responding to Coach Kazama, a Tekken content creator and a self-proclaimed Tekken coach. Coach Kazama made a response video to my viral video in which he advocates for the Tekken 8 experience of sabotaging movement and defensive options in Tekken. In his video, he will accuse me of being a quote-unquote low-level player who doesn't understand basic, fundamental Tekken concepts, and therefore my analysis on Tekken 8 is wrong. Now, regarding his video in of itself, the modus operandi he used to supposedly prove his point, Coach Kazama will 1. Invent moves and move notations that absolutely do not exist. 2. Provide wrong frame data and provide wrong move properties. 3. Commit forgery by intentionally manipulating an interaction that directly contradicts frame data. Once again, as usual, I take it upon myself to prove every point and every claim I make with living, material, unquestionable proof. It is entirely up to me to prove these claims. So let's get to work, guys. We will dissect this travesty of an analysis piece by piece. Man, the thing is, I promised myself I would just let it go, but I have this subconscious need, this primal drive to set things right. And so, here I am. We'll do it together, guys. And I hope you enjoy the ride.
So NovaSeiken uses this string as a way to show that you cannot run away from Steve while he's attacking. So here Steve uses flicker 111 and he's 0.
First misinformation, I didn't use Steve flicker 111. I used Steve flicker 11 up 1. If I use flicker 111, Steve would be at -9 on block, not neutral on block.
And then Steve uses 1, 2, 3 into flicker, which leaves him at -1, which does allow Jin to use a 1-jab here, but he doesn't to kind of exacerbate his point. So he begins his point with Steve using 1, 2, 3 back. And Steve is doing something very risky, especially at a high level, which is entering your stance without plus frames. This means that Jin can jab you and your next option will just lose, because you don't have frames to press. In simpler terms, if you see minus, you cannot mash. And this is just all part of fundamentals of the game. So this 10 frame string here that jails isn't really a big deal, because if Steve goes into flicker stance, which he does here, Jin can easily jab him out of this. Out of Steve's 1, 2, 3 back, we can just jab him out of the next option, since Steve is -1 going into stance.
And these people have the audacity to call themselves Tekken coaches. Imagine having such a superficial, such a shallow and dogmatic understanding of frames. Jesus Christ.
You minus, me press faster button, me win.
Oh, I wish it was that simple. But is that really the case if we put it to the test?
And then Steve uses 1, 2, 3 into flicker, which leaves him at -1, which does allow Jin to use a 1-jab here. Jin can jab you, and your next option will just lose, because you don't have frames to press. In simpler terms, if you see minus, you cannot mash.
Man, you don't get the right to proclaim yourself a Tekken coach and display such a shallow, dogmatic understanding of minus frames and plus frames. By your very same brain-dead logic, man, I pity the poor soul who happens to be coached by you. And take your flawed perspective to heart, because he's in for a hell of a ride when facing super boss characters like Nina, for example. Let's put your logic to the test, big brain. Nina down forward 1-2. She transitions into crouch dash at 0 on block, and her fastest option inside the crouch dash is 11 frames. Therefore, according to your shallow brain-dead logic,
Which does allow Jin to use a one jab here. Jin can jab you, and your next option will just lose, because you don't have frames to press.
but is that really the case? Is this how things go in reality? Yeah, I don't think so.
Time to play.
Now I ask you, coach, how does it feel to play the role of a clown? And I barely even started. I want you to fully grasp the extent of your stupidity, your lack of insight. Frame data in of itself is not everything. You have to take into account the properties of the options your opponent has. But of course, you completely glossed over it, because
Plus frames good, minus frames bad.
you can't observe frame data in isolation without taking into consideration the options the character has available on this specific situation that made him minus. The fact that you claimed, quote unquote, you can just jab here because he's minus.
Jin can jab you, and your next option will just lose, because you don't have frames to press.
Is already a telltale sign you don't know Steve's moves and properties. You just read -1 and immediately assumed you can jab here by simply not knowing and not understanding his options. And the living proof that you don't really know the options will become crystal clear as we proceed.
Then he uses flicker down forward 1-1, which again leaves both of you at 0, it's back to neutral.
Man, care to explain to me, what the hell is flicker down forward 1-1? You're making up moves that do not exist. I used flicker 1 up 1.
Then he uses back 2-1 back, which does put Steve at +3, and then you have to respect those frames.
Brother, what the hell is Steve back to 1 back? Steve back to 1 doesn't exist. Coach Kazama is making up moves once again. And then, once again, there's your shallow, dogmatic view on plus frames and minus frames taking over once again.
Which does put Steve at +3, and then you have to respect those frames.
No, not necessarily you must respect a +3. A +3 is a +3, nothing else. Okay, so he's +3. If you actually knew anything about the Steve matchup, which you absolutely do not, you would know that at +3, he doesn't have anything inside peekaboo, flicker or sway that can beat a down jab through frames mathematics alone. All the options that could theoretically beat a down jab on frames mathematics are beaten by the down jab high crushing property. The only way he can beat the down jab is not through frames, it's through evasion. So your whole dogmatic take of plus frames good, minus frames bad is flawed top to bottom. And unlike 1-1, which can transition to multiple stances including left weave, right weave and ducking, Steve 2-1 can only transition to peekaboo, flicker and sway, which of course you also didn't know.
Also notice that NovaSeiken's trying to backdash out of ring 0. This makes no sense, and all it does is make you guess even more.
Thanks for proving my point, big brain. This is an admission that Tekken 8 backdashes are so ineffective that the original purpose of a backdash cannot be properly applied in this godforsaken game. not only you admitted that you won't be able to create any essential whiff, but that you will be a hostage to further pressure and mix-ups again and again and again and again. What a wonderful Tekken experience, bro. It really takes a special kind of individual to advocate for this travesty. I refuse to believe I'm having to explain why I'm backdashing on range 0 against Steve. But in any case, my dear Tekken coach, you don't seem too familiar with a true, legitimate Tekken experience. Allow me to show you firsthand what I'm talking about. Here we go. When I backdash against Steve on range 0, even if I'm not able to make anything whiff at first, it is expected that I might end up further away from him after his move is blocked, so I can gradually create the space that I need that will either re-establish range 3, that is my desired range, simply because he stopped attacking for being minus, or not wanting to overextend and whiff his follow-up attack. Steve, the aggressor in this case, doesn't have to die here. He has a choice. Things were even more so in Tekken 5, where backdash peaked. Back in the day, you really shouldn't overextend your offense.
Then he shows Jin using down 4 and then attempting to mash afterwards. So here's the example.
That allows him to do shit like this.
So just with this first example, there's a lot going wrong. Fundamentally, like we went over, if you are mashing and you are minus, you will lose the interaction. There's really no doubt about it. Here, Jin uses down 4, it lands, but this puts Jin at -1. Therefore, you are not allowed to mash.
I want the spectator to see how shallow and dogmatic your analysis truly is.
If you are mashing and you are minus, you will lose the interaction. There's really no doubt about it. Here, Jin uses down 4, it lands, but this puts Jin at -1. Therefore, you are not allowed to mash. There's really no doubt about it.
In this example, we're respecting flicker down forward 1-1 and then interrupting the next follow-up. As you can see, we have time for a jab and a magic forward.
Oh my god. We resorting to forgery now, are we? Man, what you have done is despicable. You are deliberately deceiving the audience. So let's wind back to my original recorded loop that I specifically used to demonstrate sabotaged backwards movement in Tekken 8. In that loop, I always finish it with the flicker 1-up-1 variations, which are always 0 on block. And I reset the loop with both jab strings, either Steve 1-1 or Steve 2-1. Now tell me, big brain, if we end up 0 on block after flicker 1-up-1 is blocked, how the hell did you make Jin Magic 4 or Jin down forward 1 to counter hit a jab string? That is the looming question. Both Steve 1-1 and Steve 2-1 are faster than Jin Magic 4 and Jin down forward 1 at 13 frames. For someone so obsessed with frames to the point of disregarding other properties such as evasion, the crushing system, etc., how come you wouldn't notice that at 0 on block, Jin Magic 4 and Jin down forward 1 being both 13 frames cannot outspeed Steve's jab strings. It's simple. You didn't overlook it. You deliberately forced an interaction where Jin Magic 4 and Jin Down Forward 1 would be able to outspeed and counter hit Steve. You either intentionally delayed Steve's jab strings or you used a slower move. What a fraud you are, coach. I invite you, the spectator, to test this and see if Jin Magic 4 can outspeed Steve's jab strings at 0 on block. You are a fraud, coach, and you picked the absolute worst person ever to commit forgery, because I never let bullshit slide. And I will see through this bullshit to the very last detail. Let's investigate what you did here, and the truth of the matter. This is how Coach Kazama forged this interaction. Instead of going for Steve's jab strings exactly as my demonstration, he went for Steve back 1 instead. But wait, it's more than that. He didn't just go for Steve back 1, because if he went for Steve back 1, this is what would have actually happened. Devastating trade, I get launched. Once again, devastating trade, I get launched once again. So what happened in fact is, he delayed Steve back 1 in order to be outsped by Jin 13 frame checks. This is a forged interaction that literally goes against frame data. He deceived the audience into believing Jin could just wait out and casually check Steve with a 13 frames check. He basically tried to convince the audience 2 plus 2 equals 5, hiding the 2 and painting a fake 3 over it. From here on now, I'm treating you as a dishonest bad actor who is not doing things on good faith. What you just did warrants my stance from now on.
Then he shows this next example with Jin's down 3. So he tries to sidewalk Steve's flicker, which is crazy. So I'll go ahead and break this down for you. Once Jin is -3, again, you cannot mash a button here. You will lose if you mash. Here I'm showing at -1. We just respect the next mix-up and then interrupt.
He's committing forgery once again. This is unbelievable. Steve 1-1 into flicker is -1. A flicker jab is 12 frames. If Jin checks with a 13 frames down forward 1, it will lead into an unfavorable trade where Steve deals 16 damage and Jin deals 12 damage. I always hold on to the hope that the people who hate or oppose my project will be at least intellectually honest. But it's always like this. Why can't just people be intellectually honest? This is so tiresome.
This is exactly what will happen if you try to sidestep a string. This doesn't go just for Steve, this goes for really any character in the game. If you try to sidestep a flash punch without holding back, you are going to get hit just like Steve is hitting you here. So again, this is more of a lack of understanding of the mechanics of the game.
If you try to sidestep a flash punch without holding back, you are going to get hit. So again, this is more of a lack of understanding of the mechanics of the game.
If you try to sidestep a flash punch without holding back, you are going to get hit.
So then he shows Steve using his flicker stance strings, and he's stepping, and again you notice there is no back input here. He is doing a wrong sidestep. This is the absolute worst way you can sidestep in this game, and he's blaming Steve for it, right? But I don't see a back input here. He's holding back in neutral, he steps, and then he gets hit, right? So we can even look at this next example. So we can see in both cases, he steps down, no back input. You're gonna get hit by strings no matter what.
Even if you went for sidestep block, you would still get hit blockhead for the sole reason that Steve Flicker 1 is extremely fast, and the only way you could possibly block it is if you abruptly stopped your sidestep to block without generating any significant lateral movement for any sidestep attempt to be able to make any difference whatsoever. If you actually manage to sidestep block Steve's Flicker jab, it means your sidestep was for nothing, because it would not be able to evade even the most linear move in the game, because you abruptly stopped it to block too early in the animation. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm having to deal with such a level of stupidity and ignorance. How can I sleep at peace knowing people like these call themselves Tekken coaches? I can't even, bro. I can't even.
Here I'm showing at -1, we just respect the next mix-up and...
Okay, big brain. But what makes you think Steve will necessarily retaliate your -3 with 1-1? What in the world made you assume 1-1 is the mandatory option here? The only option he will go for here. What if he goes for this? Now you're in a 50-50. What if he goes for this? Now you took a hell sweep and you're also in a 50-50 again. You're falsely assuming Steve's options to retaliate my minus on hit moves are restricted to 1-1, which is absolutely not the case. The reason I made those two demonstrations, Jin down 4 into 2-1 and Jin down 3 into sidewalk, was already properly explained in my response to fighting GM. It was to showcase how powerful and dangerous Steve is on close-range interactions, by having frame supremacy on close range and by organically tracking you through his fundies without the need to think about homing moves or dedicated tracking moves. For those interested, these very same stupid claims were fully debunked here, and I'll save you, the spectator, the effort of looking for it. Here's the timestamp. I wasn't at any moment complaining that Steve has the power to organically lock you down laterally through his fundies. I was stating that because he's so powerful and oppressive on range 0, you must be able to disengage from him through effective backwards movement, which does not happen to exist in Tekken 8.
So this next example is even more egregious, and it really just kind of drives it home that this player really doesn't know the fundamentals of the game. So he shows off that Jin will get counter hit if he mashes after landing down 4. But it doesn't matter if you land the move or not. If you're a -1, you don't get to mash. Notice what NovaSeiken does here. He tries to mash Magic 4. He has nowhere near the amount of frames to try and get this to work. Here's an example of us just blocking back 1. We get a 14 frame punish.
Gotcha! You see, I got you, I knew it. This is the living proof you don't know shit about Steve. You will not ever punish Steve back 1, because no Steve player will ever throw out back 1 without transitioning into Flicker. Let me enlighten you, coach. Transitioning into Flicker is mandatory to make Steve back 1 safe on block, safer on whiff, and to be able to optimize the counter hit conversion. But of course, visibly, you didn't know about that.
So then his next point is to just press buttons. And this is just a sad take. This is a take I would expect maybe someone in yellow or green rank to make.
I never advise people to press buttons, you dishonest rat. What I said is that in the absence of effective traditional Tekken movement, the devs forced you to interact with the opponent by the usage of buttons. It's what the people you keep licking the balls, such as fighting GM, would call quote-unquote
Active defense.
I'm the most vocal critic of this game design, you dishonest rat. My whole project revolves around the claim that things shouldn't ever be like this.
So then he shows some very suboptimal ways to deal with Steve's flicker stance. Let's just look at what NovaSeiken is showing us.
This.
So he does a dick jab after flicker stance. Could potentially be a decent option, but also very, very, very risky.
And this.
Down 4, also very risky.
And this.
And a down 2 is extremely risky. Choosing down 2 after flicker stance is like signing your life away. He goes on to make a point that down 2 exists to be a counter hit launcher because you're beating people who are pressing buttons and mashing into you.
Speaking of Jin down 2, this is the living proof of your complete lack of insight on these matters. There's this interesting comment from a guy that apparently doesn't even like me at all, considering he called me a pretentious emo boy and annoying AF. Come on, pretentious. You could say that. I might have to work on this along the road. But come on, emo boy. I'm not emo, bro. I listen to prog, jazz fusion, instrumental stuff. I'm not emo. But I digress. For the guy who posted this, I want you to know I like you regardless. Because you're real, and you give the credit where it's due. What you claim is in fact true. That I was a massive critic of Tekken 7, and that I have labbed Tekken more than this Asuka player will ever lab in his entire life. As a matter of fact, that is true. But let's see what he had to say to you. According to him, I didn't lab shit, and Jin down 2 is quote-unquote atrocious against Steve. Little does he know that before Season 2, Jin down 2 was the quintessential super move against Steve. It completely flipped the odds of the matchup upside down. This move was the bane of Steve players' existence. If we go back to Season 1, Jin gained the alien power to get inside while slashing the opponent from underneath. If there was one player base screaming their lungs out for Jin down 2 to be gutted, that was the Steve player base. Because they were used to a reality where they had absolute matchup supremacy against Jin. And the only thing the Jin player could do was to be a neutral genius, constantly disengage from Steve, and play the neutral range game as a freaking machine. One move alone completely flipped the odds of the matchup upside down, because then not only Jin could outgun Steve on the range game, but when playing from the inside in close range, the odds were somehow equalized when gambling interactions with Steve on close range. Now, it wouldn't be only Jin getting counter hit launched every time. You are absolutely clueless on these matters.
Next, he explains when he's getting counter hit by faker stance, what happens when he tries to use down 2, and the risks of using down 2.
Disaster.
There's him using down 4 for some reason against flicker stance, and there's down 2 for some reason against flicker stance.
And even my most reliable option.
Then he says his most reliable option against this is dick jab, which is insane because if we go back, we see that Steve enters his stance at +3. So we'll go back and read that. Boom. 2-1 back puts Steve in flicker stance at +3. Which means pressing anything here is a terrible option. And I'm going to show you what you should actually be doing against flicker stance. That is fundamentally sound.
Lo and behold, guys, the Asuka player is going to teach us, Jin players, our options to beat Steve's swarming pressure with jailing highs when we cannot freaking move in this travesty of a Tekken game. No, It's not through outspeeding him through frames, and it's also not through our high crushing options. In fact, only this guy, Coach Kazama, and his vast Tekken knowledge you can only acquire by playing Asuka, will tell us what we can actually do. We can see firsthand the extent of his knowledge. Here, for example, there was a guy that criticized his video. Unfortunately, apparently, he deleted the guy's comment. But here, he talked about Magic 4 as an answer, in which he claims that so many characters have a Magic 4 at 11 frames, such as Jin, Jun, Reina. Jin Magic 4 is not 11 frames, it is 13 frames. Reina Magic 4 is not 11 frames, it's 13 frames. Jun Magic 4 is not 11 frames as well, it is 12 frames. But wait a minute, isn't this guy a Kazama player? Doesn't he play Jun as a Kazama player? Isn't he supposed to know his own character's frame data? The guy doesn't know his own character's frame data. I can only imagine the quote-unquote fundamentally sound advice he can give us, right? This is insane, man. I mean, how is this even real?
And always gamble.
And then he says an option is to gamble. No, never gamble. Always have data behind your options. Gambling is never an option. Never gamble in Tekken. This is not the game to do that in. Always have data behind your option.
Said the guy who doesn't know jack shit about Steve and his options. Said the guy who fabricates move notations that do not exist multiple times. Said the guy who misinforms the audience with wrong frame data. Said the guy who forges interactions that contradict frame data to mislead the audience into believing he has a point. Who are you to talk about being fueled by knowledge on your decision making when you don't have the knowledge to begin with?
As he says here, gambling will always lead to disaster. I totally agree. Do not gamble.
Exactly, big brain. We should not be relegated to gamble interactions. That was my whole point. And that is precisely why movement used to exist in Tekken. Now wait. I know Tekken movement must be an alien, a foreign concept to the everyday Asuka player. I know that. But the way you are dismissing the necessity for effective movement tells me you do not understand this game as much as you think you do.
So let me break this down for a little bit. I'll mute this and show you why this is really problematic. So just beginning with like this first scenario here. Steve does back 2-1 into down forward 1-1.
Man, what is actually problematic is you, a self-proclaimed Tekken coach, making up moves and move notations that do not exist. What I demonstrated is Steve 2-1 into flicker jab. Steve does not have back 2-1, let alone back 2-1 into down forward 1-1. What the hell? Stop talking about stuff you visibly do not understand. You're making up moves that do not exist.
And now comments like this don't really apply. Nowhere near the rewards the attacker would get in case you get it wrong. So let me show you what he's exemplifying here. So his very last point here is saying that you shouldn't be relegated to use buttons. And the fact of the matter is, you are not. You have to learn how to defend.
You have to learn how to defend. Just for reference, by Tekken defense, this is what he means, by the way.
You have to learn, like I said earlier, where the cracks are. You do not respond as defense by pressing buttons. It is such a risky and gambly way to play the game.
Yeah, because we can certainly move in Tekken 8, right? We're totally not forced to interact with the opponent, right? Man, what the hell you're doing?
Again, like we talked about earlier, if Steve goes into flicker with back 2-1, he's +3. You do not press here. And I'm not sure why he's kind of pressuring the fact that you need to press a button here. It's not doomed. It's not doomed. I'll show you why. So here he's taking a big risk. Do not do what he's doing right here. Pressing down forward. Do not do this. Then he goes back into flicker at +3. Don't press, right? You don't have frames to press. Then he presses and he dies. Then he exemplifies that Steve gets 100 damage. He better get 100 damage for you making such a big mistake. The trick here, though, is that flicker forward 2 is punishable on block. Now let's rewind. Get past this part and go back to flicker forward 2. So back to 1, flicker, forward 2. This move is punishable on block. I believe it's -14. Steve loses this interaction if you just block. Right, get rid of these buttons here. You're panicking. Hold back. Steve tries to make a read with forward 2. You block it, you punish it, and that's it. There's no malding, there's no panic. You played good Tekken here. But this is bad Tekken.
Okay, that's enough. I can't take this anymore. First of all, what the hell is Flicker F2? Flicker F2 doesn't exist, man. Steve has Flicker 2 and Flicker back 2. How come you don't know Steve has only 4 moves inside Flicker? He has the Flicker jab and its variations, he has Flicker 2, he has Flicker back 2, the power crush, and he has the Flicker throw. How come a self-proclaimed Tekken coach doesn't know that? The move I demonstrated is Flicker 2, which is the quintessential Steve power mid. How many times will you make up moves that do not exist? But let's hear you again, because I want to make sure the spectator can hear you loud and clear and that we're not crazy.
The trick here, though, is that flicker forward 2 is punishable on block. This move is punishable on block. I believe it's -14.
Brother, -14. Are you freaking kidding me? Steve Flicker 2 is -5 on block. It is 100% safe on block. You're not punishing shit. And you wanna know how I know you're doing this on bad faith? Because in your video, you didn't try to punish it to prove your point. The punish prompt would never appear on the screen if you tried. So I know you're doing this on bad faith. You just picked the worst guy possible to try to bullshit. Man, these people do not learn. They keep on lying, and trying to discredit me. And it doesn't ever stop. Yet, here I stand. This move was always safe, ever since Tekken 4 when Steve was introduced. Jesus Christ, I will not take this anymore. This is insane, man. You don't get to lecture people about deep Tekken when you don't know the very basics of the game. You don't get the right to proclaim yourself a Tekken coach, man. This is embarrassing. It's unbelievable. Not only you invent move notations that do not exist, not only you provide wrong frame data to the audience, not only you forge interactions that contradict frame data by intentionally delaying moves to make them come out slower than they should, but you also don't have the most basic, quintessential matchup knowledge. To know Steve Flicker 2 properties is basic, quintessential matchup knowledge. How come you feel the right to proclaim yourself an authority on matters you completely ignore? How come you feel you have the right to attack my video and my knowledge on Tekken if you're so lacking in the most basic knowledge? I'm sorry, but you don't know jack shit, man. And that is what Tekken 8 has done to people. I personally knew Tekken 7 Eternal Rulers that were objectively more knowledgeable than you and understood the game much better than you do. Of course, they were not Asuka players. They were Mishima players. They were Steve players. They were Kazumi players. They were Lee players. They were Dragunov players. They were Brian players. And so on. What this game has done to its player base is nearly beyond repair. Sometimes I wonder if all my efforts are even worth it. I literally feel like Sisyphus, being condemned to push a boulder uphill and it never ends. I often get the feeling that I'm ice skating uphill, and I'm perfectly aware all this effort might amount to nothing in the end, because there are people like you who will fight against the improvement of this game, people who advocate for this travesty of game design, this anti-skill gap experiment called Tekken 8. You people keep attacking me and bombarding the audience with lies and misinformation. But when my project is fueled by good faith, I'm not doing this to destroy Tekken. I'm trying to improve the experience by making Tekken, Tekken again. Thank God I know that I'm not alone in this. And it's because of these people who genuinely love the Tekken franchise, I'll keep fighting the good fight. You will not stop me. You cannot stop me. No matter how much you people organize to try to attack me. No matter how much you people lie and misinform the audience. I'll be here and I'll prove you wrong. And that's it for today, guys. Another day, another bad actor bites the dust. Once again, I'll ask you guys that you share my project as much as you possibly can. Particularly my previous video, which was of the utmost importance. Share it with your Tekken friends and on Tekken related social media. I ask that you guys share it because I'm actively disenfranchised and censored everywhere I go. I legit cannot do this alone. I want to thank you guys for all the kindness, all the support you guys have been given to me personally and to the faith you have on this project as a whole. Thank you so much for it, guys. It's because of you guys I keep pushing forward. We will save Tekken in the end. I just know it. We have to believe it. For now, I take my leave and we'll be seeing each other again, guys. God bless.